Every morning, while other children wore clean uniforms and walked to school with books in their hands, one little boy walked barefoot under the hot sun, carrying a tray of sachet water on his head. He did not sell water because he wanted money for toys. He sold water because if he didn't, his family would not eat. His name was Tunde. Tunde was only 10 years old, but life had already introduced him to pain, hunger, and responsibility. His father had died when he was very young. His mother washed clothes for people in rich neighborhoods just to keep the family alive. Some days, she came home with sore hands and swollen feet. Some days, she came home with nothing. And on those days, Tunde and his two younger sisters would sleep hungry. Not because they were lazy, but because life can be cruel to people who are already trying their best. So every morning before the sun rose, Tunde would wake up, carry a basin of sachet water. While children his age were learning in classrooms, he was learning survival on the roadside.
Pure water! Pure water!
He walked through the streets, shouting for survival. The hardest part of Tunde's life was not the hunger. It was watching other children go to school. Every day he would stand near the school gate and stare at them. He admired their uniforms, their shoes, their laughter. Sometimes, when nobody was watching, he would bend down and pick torn pieces of paper from the ground, old notebooks, used textbooks, abandoned worksheets, so he built his own classroom from what the world threw away. At night, after selling water all day, Tunde would sit outside their small room under a weak streetlight and teach himself how to read. His mother once saw him tracing letters on a dirty paper with a broken pencil, and she began to cry. Tunde looked up and asked, "Mama, why are you crying?" She responded and said, "Because you deserve more than this life is giving you." But not everyone felt sorry for Tunde. Some people mocked him. Some children laughed at him because of his torn clothes. Some adults treated him like he was invisible. One afternoon, while trying to sell water near a school gate, a boy in uniform pointed at him and said, "You will never become anything. You were born to suffer." Those words cut deeper than hunger. That night, Tunde did not cry in front of anyone, but after everyone slept, he cried silently in the dark. Not because he believed the words, but because a part of him was afraid they might be true. Still, the next morning, he got up again. Because when life is hard, sometimes courage is simply waking up one more day. One hot afternoon, Tunde was selling water near a traffic jam. Cars were lined up, horns were blaring, people were angry. He walked from car to car, hoping to sell enough to buy food for the night. Then he got to a black SUV. Inside sat an older man in glasses. The man rolled down his window and bought 2 sachets of water. But before driving off, he looked closely at Tunde and asked, "Young boy, why are you not in school?" Tunde lowered his head. Then quietly, he said, "Sir, school is for people who can pay." The man was silent. Then he asked, "If someone paid for your school, would you go?" Tunde looked at him with eyes full of disbelief and pain, and he said something the man would never forget. "Sir, I don't just want to go to school. I want to become someone who helps children like me." The man was stunned, because those were not the words of an ordinary child. Those were the words of a dream that refused to die. The man's name was Mr. Adebayo. He was a retired school principal. The next week, he came looking for Tunde. At first, Tunde thought he had done something wrong. But instead, the man handed him a small bag. Inside were 2 school uniforms, notebooks, sandals, and a pair of black shoes. Tunde held the bag like it was gold. Then Mr. Adebayo said, "You are going back to school." Tunde froze, his lips trembled, and for the first time in a long time, he cried openly. Not tears of pain, tears of hope. When he got home and showed his mother, she collapsed to the floor and wept. She kept saying, "God has remembered us. God has remembered us." But getting into school was not the end of Tunde's struggle. It was only the beginning of a different battle. He was older than some of the children in his class. He was behind in many subjects. Some students still mocked him. Some teachers underestimated him. And after school, he still had to help his mother survive. So Tunde lived 2 lives. By day, he was a student. By evening, he was a street hawker. By night, he was a dreamer fighting sleep to study. He was tired. Sometimes he wanted to give up. Sometimes the pressure felt too heavy for a child to carry. But every time he felt like quitting, he remembered the pain of standing outside the school gate. And he told himself, "I did not come this far to go back." Years passed. Tunde worked harder than anyone expected. He became one of the best students in his class. Then in his final year, he did the impossible. He graduated as one of the top students in his school. The same boy who once sold water barefoot in traffic was now standing on a stage in front of applause. As he received his award, his mother sat in the crowd crying uncontrollably. She was watching pain lose. She was watching sacrifice speak. She was watching grace rewrite a family story. Tunde eventually got a scholarship and went to university. Life was still not easy. He did small jobs, he tutored students, he skipped meals sometimes, but he kept going because he had not forgotten his promise. The promise he made inside that black SUV years ago. I want to become someone who helps children like me. And after many years of hard work, prayer, discipline and tears, Tunde did something nobody saw coming. He opened a small learning center in his community. At first, it was just one rented room, a few benches, a whiteboard, a handful of children. But those children were just like him, poor, forgotten, full of hidden greatness. He taught them for almost nothing, sometimes for free, because he knew what it felt like to be a child with a big dream and no opportunity. And that one room eventually became 2, then 3, then a full building. And years later, Tunde officially opened his own school, a real school, with classrooms, uniforms, teachers, books, and most importantly, a scholarship program for children who could not afford education. And the day of the opening ceremony, people came from all over. Some recognized him. Some remembered the barefoot boy who used to shout, "Cold water, pure water." But now, he stood in front of a school gate with a suit on his body and tears in his eyes. Above him was the signboard with the school name, and beneath it a smaller line that read, "No child should be denied education because of poverty." At that moment, Tunde broke down and cried because he realized something powerful. The same life that once humiliated him had now made him a solution. One morning, as school resumed, Tunde stood quietly at the entrance and watched children walk in. Clean uniforms, smiling faces, books in their hands. And suddenly, he remembered the little boy he used to be, the barefoot child standing outside a gate, dreaming of a life he could not touch. We made it. Not because he became rich, not because life became perfect, but because he did not let pain have the final word. And sometimes, that is the greatest victory of all. Never laugh at someone because they are struggling today. Some people are only one opportunity away from changing their entire bloodline. Your current condition is not your final conclusion. If life is hard right now, keep going. One day, your pain may become the reason someone else survives. Don't give up. Your story is still being written. Poverty is a chapter, not the whole story. What lesson did you learn from this story? What would you tell someone who is struggling like Tunde did? Please drop your comments. Also like and share this story to others. Please follow for more.